Do you have any intro ideas?
Myke, I have no intro ideas. We've been talking as usual for 3 hours about everything in the world, and now we have to record a podcast, and I have no idea what to do for the intro.
I feel like that's just going to be what it is.
Okay, go. 3, 2, 1, podcast.
WWDC is approaching pretty quickly.
Oh,
Not far away.
Coming up so fast. I feel like we were just at WWDC, and like it's going to be tomorrow.
I mean, for most of my shows, it's an important part of the year, right? Like it's, as you say, it's like the beginning and end of a year. I don't ever think that when we started this show, I expected it to be that way for our show, but it just is because we do something so strange every year, right? Where we record in person. We never ever do that except at WWDC.
It has become, even for Cortex, a real calendar event. Mm-hmm. And it obviously makes sense as the start and end of a year, because summertime is the start and end of the year, and January is a dumb time to do the start and the end of the year. But yeah, every time WWDC comes up and it's the summer, it's like, oh God, has a whole year gone by already? I can't believe it. And so yeah, we were just doing our calendar planning, and it is coming up. It's coming up fast, Myke. What's going on this year at WWDC?
I wanted to let the Cortexans know that I'm going to be doing a live show again. Relay FM is going to be doing a live show on June the 5th at the Hammer Theatre, which is where we were last year, which was amazing. And I know that we had a lot of Cortex listeners that came out to that. We have our tickets, it's on sale, but there's only about 50 or 60 seats left. There are balcony seats, which is a great view. We love this theatre. We were so impressed with it last year. Like every single seat in the house is a fantastic seat. It's laid out really, really well. So if you want to come out and see our Relay FM live show at WWDC, I'll put a link in the show notes to the tickets, but it's at the Hammer Theatre. You can Google that and you can buy our tickets there too, but there'll be a link there. So yeah, there's not many left. And so if you want to come out and see our show, which is a fun one, always at WWDC.
Yeah. You put on a good show, Myke. People should buy some tickets if they're interested, if they're going to be in WWDC. Like it's a great venue, and it was really fun last year. So yeah, go get some tickets.
Now, I had a great question come in from a listener recently that I wanted to talk about on today's episode. And then I figured, why don't we just make this entire episode an Ask Cortex?
You want to roll into some Ask Cortex?
I do, but I have a CareTex question that came in.
Oh, CareTech. It's been a long time.
It's been a very long time since that segment. And this comes from listener Myke. Listener Myke says...
Wait a minute. Is this great question actually just you, Myke? Oh, I have an amazing question I want to start the show with. It's from Myke.
I feel like I should have just said Michael, right? Like, because at least it would have maybe pushed it away from your brain far enough. But no, it's Myke with an I.
Okay.
So it can't be me.
Can't be you, no.
Myke says, I find myself having trouble putting my theme into action. My yearly theme is sweating the small stuff, because I constantly miss details or do things less well than they could be done because I'm not thinking about those small details. The trouble is that my yearly theme doesn't pop into my head until after I've already done something poorly. You and Gray talk about how a theme is something in the back of your own minds that informs all of your actions for a year, but it feels like there's maybe a habit-building step that either I haven't caught or hasn't been discussed that I want to get a hang of, and I was wondering if you had any tips. I tell you, I can sympathize with this problem at times, where I'll do a thing and be like, wow, that wasn't about stabilizing at all, was it? So again, like just for a refresher, my yearly themes this year are stabilization and diversification. So for me, I'm interested to know what you're doing or if you do something for this, but I've spoken a bunch about my journaling over time. That is what keeps me kind of on the straight and narrow when it comes to my themes. And that is from basically taking the time every day to think about what I'm doing and to note kind of how I'm feeling, because how I'm feeling should match with those two things. I shouldn't feel like my life is getting out of control when it comes to work, because if it is, that means I'm not where I want to be. I want to make sure like I'm in control of things. But one of the big parts for me is my daily themes, right? So the questions that I ask myself every day. And they got updated a little bit. I was talking about that recently, just to be words rather than questions, and the way that I score them. So my 7 kind of daily themes that I want to try and attack in some way every day are to create, to advance, one word is just revenue, teamwork, marriage, engage, and health. So not everything in that list ladders up to my themes. Some are just things that I want to make sure that I'm paying attention to. But to me, right now, the ones that I'm focusing on the most are advance, create, and revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Like those three things, if I make sure that every day I am at least doing some work that I would count in each of those buckets, then I know that I'm moving towards my themes. Right? So like what I like about this kind of system is every day I'm having to basically check something off, right? To be like, did you move this forward? And in theory, if I was right in the way I've set it out for myself at the beginning of the year, I should be able to stay on course as long as I'm doing something towards those daily themes.
So here's the thing. I'm going to totally back up journaling. Although part of the problem is if you're trying to establish habits, is that journaling in and of itself is a kind of habit. There's a little bit of like a feedback loop that's going on here. But whenever I do go through, because I don't journal consistently, I always want to be journaling more. And when I do it, the phrase that always leaps to my mind is like, I am angry at how effective it is because it is such a simple tool. And so I tend to use it in bursts and then I sort of fall away from it for a little while. So I'm not super consistent with it. But yeah, if you're trying to keep an idea in your mind and you want to try to trigger thoughts before something happens, if journaling is a kind of habit that you can maintain, then I think there is perhaps nothing better that you could possibly do to set it up that like, I'm going to visit this every day and I'm going to have a system of accountability and I'm going to do all these things. If like me, you're either inconsistent with the journaling or you just feel like that's not a habit that you could sustain while you're trying to do something else, I would suggest for this Myke, who's totally not at all my podcast co-host, that I might just literally print out your theme and put it somewhere where you're going to see it more obviously.
There was a lot of listeners around yearly theme time incorporate their theme into their smartphone wallpaper.
Oh, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. I like that. The only thing I'm going to say, though, is I do think if you're going to do this, it's actually quite important to move or change it on a somewhat regular basis because you can just become totally blind to it. Like if you write out like sweat the small stuff and you stick it on the top of your computer monitor, it becomes invisible after a little while. You don't really notice it. Because again, I always think of this as like in productivity, there's this thing about the Hawthorne effect, which is simply changing almost anything increases productivity. But then there's a half-life to that. And so if you're going to have something that you can visually see, I would move it around so that you don't become visually blind to it. So for me, one of the ways, I don't print out what my theme is, but one of the ways that I do keep it in top of mind is that in OmniFocus, I do have folders that contain projects that are related to the theme, like and have the year name. So it's like year of reorder. And it's like, here are the things that are directly related to this. And because I'm going through OmniFocus a bunch, like that is one of the ways in which I help keep it top of mind. And that folder is also at the top so that hopefully when I'm going through things, it's like I see that and that just plants the idea in my head a little bit. And then as I'm reviewing projects, I can see like, does this work towards the overall goal of what you're looking for this year or not? So that's the place that it exists in my life. But I do think you need to have some place where you're revisiting or seeing it. Otherwise, it's basically like a New Year's resolution, right? Where you say like, oh, I'm going to do this thing. And then you never think about it again. You have to have a loop. You have to have a feedback loop somewhere of revisiting and adjusting.
Yeah, it's much more than just having the idea.
Yeah.
There has to be some kind of reinforcement mechanism for yourself.
Yeah, you've got to come back to it. And that's really the key. And you can't just expect that you're going to think about it at the appropriate times. And also, I always want to say this as well. Never expect perfection from yourself. Like the whole reason that you probably set a theme in terms of whatever it is because this is an area that you have a hard time with. So like failure is always part of the process. Like you're going to not sweat the small stuff if the thing that you're concerned about you don't do enough is sweating the small stuff. So like don't beat yourself up for small mistakes.
Yeah, and also like spend some time thinking about what that actually means as well. If all you have is those words, like just those 4 words, that's not enough. Because otherwise you got to be like 100% hit rate on thinking about all the small things in a year. Like you need to understand, what does that look like for you? Like what actual outcomes do you want to see? And spend some time kind of like thinking those through, writing them down. What exact things do you want to get better at that falls under this banner?
Yeah, like something actionable that I was doing much more towards the start of the year, but I think of it like as a sub-theme for the year of reorder, was I was thinking about closing projects that, like my OmniFocus just has a lot of open projects, and some of which have been open for an embarrassingly long period of time. And so like the clear, actionable idea there is this list of projects that I have should shrink. It shouldn't continue to grow over the course of the year. By the end of the year, the number of projects should be much smaller. And so trying to say like, this is never going to happen. I'm just going to close this project. Like we all do, to look at a little project that's been on the list for 6 months and say, you know what, I could knock this out in 2 hours if I just sat down and did it. And like, boom, get that thing done. And that feeds into the feeling of the year of reorder. It's like, oh, having a cleaner, smaller list of projects feels more orderly and it feels better. And it's also a clearly actionable task. Like, there's a number of projects, it should be smaller. It's not a goal, but it's like, it's a direction that you can clearly move in. And it's become a bit of an articulation of what does the year of reorder mean in a concrete way. And that's one of the ways it is manifested over these months.
This episode of Cortex is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Look, we can all hold our hands up, right? And just say, cybercrime doesn't happen to me. Why would people want my data? Well, the bad news is stealing data from people like me and like you using public Wi-Fi is actually one of the simplest ways for bad people to make money from your information. If you leave your internet connection unencrypted, then your passwords and credit card numbers could be vulnerable. But there's something you can do to protect yourself from cybercrimes, and that's to start using ExpressVPN. It works by securing and anonymizing your internet browsing, encrypting your data, and hiding your public IP address with easy-to-use apps that run seamlessly in the background of your device. You can turn on ExpressVPN protection with just one click, then you're free to safely surf on public Wi-Fi without being snooped on or having your personal data stolen. ExpressVPN is rated the #1 VPN service by TechRadar and comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. And all of this is great, and that's one of the reasons I use ExpressVPN, but it's also good for location stuff. I live in the UK. Sometimes I will need to go to a website to read an article or watch a video, and I'm locked out because I am in Europe. Well, I can use ExpressVPN, and I can say, hey, I'm actually in New York right now, and the website goes, okay, and then shows me the article that it should have shown me in the first place. Super useful feature of ExpressVPN. For less than $7 a month, you can get the same ExpressVPN protection that I have. If you ever use public Wi-Fi and want to keep the bad guys away from your data, you need ExpressVPN. So, go to expressvpn.com/Cortex to learn more and protect your online activity today. Find out how you can get 3 months for free at expressvpn.com/Cortex. That is expressvpn.com/Cortex for 3 months free with a 1-year package. Our thanks to ExpressVPN for their support of this show and all of Relay FM. So we have some Ask Cortex questions. The first comes from KJI. Does Myke still worry about career length in the entertainment field?
Still, did this come up on an old show?
I can only assume that it did. Maybe it's just a general, just aura I have about me.
Right. You've never said it, but you give off anxiety. It radiates out from your body.
Oh, Myke, he really radiates anxiety. It's probably an interesting way to describe me as a human. Yeah, of course I do. I definitely worry about that because all things that are entertaining are only entertaining for a period of time. Mm-hmm. I don't have any way of ensuring it that I can be successful in this field. I guess really the thing that I consider the thing that helps me sleep at night when I think about what if everybody just got bored of me is that I have built a company at this point which can support other creative people. And so that is always a skill that I will have, and I will always have experience in doing that. So I do genuinely expect that at some point in my life, I don't create as much and really am just assisting other people because I'm realistic in that. I'm trying to be realistic in that regard. Like, I can't be relevant forever.
Yeah, I was going to say to KJI, who's asking this question, Gray can worry too about career length in the entertainment field. I happen to know I have a spreadsheet where I track a bunch of my videos, and I happen to notice that my UK Explained video is coming up on 8.5 years old now at this point, which is just like inconceivable to me that it was that long ago. My view of careers in entertainment is that they're like perfect storms that, we think of creators and people who entertain for a living like comics and actors and authors, and what you have are people with particular skills, but you also have to have the weather of the broader culture, and the global audience has to match up with the thing that the person is producing. And you don't have any control over that weather. So if you're a comic, like, you may be the world's number one comic for a period of years, but tastes in humor change, and your very presence influences the change in taste of people. So I really think it's crazy when I talk to people in entertainment who seem to just assume that their careers will last forever. And it's like, no. The very fact that you're here changes this weather system and makes it more likely that some new hotness is going to appear that people are going to then be interested in. So, I don't know how long my career in entertainment will last, but I have never expected it to last my whole life. I think that's pure insanity. I don't think we have really good numbers on how long YouTube careers can last, because YouTube hasn't been around that long, but it is a thing that's on my mind sometimes. Is, am I still going to be making YouTube videos and podcasts when I'm in my 50s? And it's like, I don't know. That seems unlikely. And so that's a thing that I will have to start planning for more and more as time goes on.
There does exist people that have been podcasting for like 15 years successfully, at this point. Yeah,
the podcast world is longer, but I think also just like you can find actors who have been acting for 20 and 30 years. You're talking about an outlier group within an outlier group.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, I think it's insane to assume, like, if you're in a career in entertainment, you're already in this outlier group. And it's like, oh, not only am I lucky enough to be here, I'm going to be like the luckiest of the lucky group. And that seems like insanity thinking to me. So yeah, I know people do have these long careers, but I think they're very few. Like, actors seem to come and go in these seasons. And then it's like, oh, and you never see this person ever again. They were in a whole bunch of movies for, a few years, and then like, whoosh, dust in the wind.
I've been holding on to this question for a while, but I am genuinely interested to get your opinion on it. Thimone asks, what are your opinions on the Marie Kondo hype?
Is Marie Kondo hyped? Is this because of our Netflix show?
Yeah, the Netflix show. It was a big deal, man, for like a little bit of time.
I was going to say, I feel like there's something in the weather that I should be reacting to here, but...
Well, but no, this is interesting to me on another level. I'd never heard of Marie Kondo before the Netflix show. You clearly have.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. I was into Marie Kondo before she was cool.
You're a Marie Kondo hipster, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I suppose. I read her book a long time ago.
Interesting. Why did you read that book?
God, I can't remember. Someone must have recommended it to me. I don't know. Like, it genuinely so long ago. I think I must have read it in the initial wave when it came out.
What do you think of the book? Because I haven't read the book. I've just watched the TV show, and my understanding is the book has more philosophy around it.
Okay, yeah. So I watched the Netflix show with my wife, and we both loved it. Like, it's just fun.
Oh, I'm pleased you loved it. I loved it too.
Oh, good. Do people not? Like, how can you not love Marie Kondo? She's adorable.
I don't understand it either, but yes.
It's like, this adorable woman is going to come and talk in a soft Japanese voice, and your house is going to be clean. It's
Some
like,
of the couples are troubling. Like, they're very frustrating, and I think that's what helped a lot of people bounce off. The first episode might actually be the worst episode, and which is like peculiar to me that they started that way. But overall, we really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I don't remember the couples in particular, but again, speaking of outlier groups, you don't get a lot of normal, regular people who apply to be on TV shows, right? Like, you know, couples on a semi-reality TV show, they're not going to be a normal couple, you know, and it's often, you know, you wonder this thing about like, oh, these people know that someone's coming to their house to clean up, and this is what their house still looks like. It's like, Jesus Christ, what must it look like normally? But then part of me thinks maybe this is exactly what it looks like because they're making poor judgment calls and being on TV in the first place. But whatever. No, I totally loved it. But here's an analogy. It's a bit like watching the Lord of the Rings movies, which I really liked. But when I was watching them, I couldn't help but think that your average moviegoer is missing a lot of the experience here. And Marie Kondo's show sort of struck me in the same way that like, oh, I really like this, but I don't know. I was really glad that I had read the book because I feel like I really understood what she was going for in ways where she's just saying a little sentence on the show. And it's like, but there's so much more behind this. But like, what did you take away from the show as someone who hasn't read the book? I mean, you say you liked it.
A better way to store my t-shirts.
Yeah? Are your t-shirts happy now, Myke?
They are happy. I did Marie Kondo my t-shirt collection. It's like it's much more neatly folded now. Like I have that great folding method that she does where you kind of stand everything up so you can see everything, which is great. It helped me. It actually did really help me in getting rid of a lot of them. Right, where it was kind of just like, all right, let's be real about this. Like, we don't need all of these forever. I just thank the t-shirts that have been nice to me, and they can be donated now. And you know, in general, I took, I think, a lot of practical tips from the show. You know, stuff like the way that you organize your kitchen, and you know, it's not groundbreaking, but like putting things inside of boxes and putting them in drawers. I'd never really seen someone do that before. Like, nor had I really like considered it as something to do for my own home. So I enjoyed it for that. And then, of course, it was just an entertaining show. But I don't feel like I really understand her reasoning behind a lot of it. But I'm very confident that it's there.
So it's interesting that you asked this because I actually think Marie Kondo is maybe the most perfect example of an idea that some people really hate. And it's the concept of the thing that isn't true, but is still useful. So if you read Marie Kondo's book, which I genuinely recommend to all the listeners, there is a thing about Japan which is useful to know before you read it, which is Shintoism, which is I'll say it's a religion in Japan, but it's not a religion in the traditional way that people think of it. But one of the concepts of Shintoism is that the inanimate world is alive with spirits. So like the world is alive in this way. And I think if you've ever watched movies like any of the Miyazaki films or a lot of Japanese movies, you can kind of see this cultural influence in them. It's like, boy, the world is alive. Like in Spirited Away, everything is alive. And when you think about that, the book has this really interesting concept of constantly relating to all of your objects. Like you said, she has this idea of before you get rid of your clothes, you want to thank them for the service they have provided you, even if you don't need them now. And she has the concept of making sure that the things are happy, that like, oh, all of your t-shirts are folded in a way so that the t-shirts are happy. Now, obviously, I don't think that there's a spirit that lives in my t-shirt. So that isn't literally true. I don't think that I literally need to thank an object before getting rid of it. But it puts your brain in the right space.
100%.
Yeah, and I have found myself constantly revisiting the idea of, are these objects happy? Now, like what's really occurring there is, it's the question of, are these things stored in a way which I feel good about, right? Like that's really what's occurring. But thinking of it as like, oh, all of these wires, they're unhappy in this box, is just like conceptually a framework that makes a lot more sense. And so my wife and I, for years, have used this phrasing of like, oh, the cleaning products in that drawer are very unhappy, right? Like, so that like they need to be rearranged so that they can be happy. And it's like, it's not true, but it's so useful. It's such a useful concept to think of this little spirit world. And I really think, like, I have seen people I know who have a hard time getting rid of things. The idea of like thanking the object gives them this kind of closure. And it's like, it doesn't make any sense on a logical level, but it makes sense on this weird emotional level, that if you get people to thank their old pair of jeans for all of the fun concerts they've been to with those jeans, somehow that mentally closes a door that lets people let go of those objects. So she has a ton of stuff in those books that if you just read it in a literal way, she sounds like a crazy person. But I think if you read it in this metaphorical way, and keeping in mind this idea of like a very alive world, I think the book is incredibly useful, even though it is not literally true for 90% of it. You know, and then 10% of it is just greatly actionable tips. And my personal favorite, which I actually just did recently with my office, so obvious but never really occurred to me, is that when you want to clear out you want to rearrange your closet, or you want to rearrange anything, take everything out and then put it back. Mm-hmm. And I just did this with all of the electronics in my home office. And man, it was a quite literally 3-day long project of, I dumped out all of the wires, like, and all of the electronic gizmos and like all of these things that you just sort of accumulate over time. And it's such a great tip because it then requires like more effort to put them back than to say, you know what, this thing doesn't really need to be here. Well,
and also you can't change your mind.
Yeah.
You can't be like, this project sucks, I won't bother with it, because it's all out now.
Yeah, it's like a commitment device. And I remember the first time I ever did it after I read her book was I did it with my closet. Like, take out all of the clothes and then put them back. And it was like, this is amazing. It's such a simple, obvious idea. But, you know, previously, if I was going to, quote, organize my closet, you do it in this haphazard way. You sort of like look through things and you're trying to find stuff to take out. And that's terrible. And it's not clear. It doesn't work very well. So I really like her. I think people should read the book, even though it does sound like Insanity Town at some points. But I really think it is a great example of this concept. Like, it's not literally true, but it's useful.
I definitely wouldn't have thought you would say that. I didn't think that you were gonna hate it, but like, I didn't know you'd read the books, so it makes a lot more sense to me that maybe you've taken more from it than just like the base tips, right? Because I had assumed that the books had more kind of meat to them.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. And again, I think it's really easy to dismiss. And it is why I want, like, the very way this question for Ask Cortex was phrased makes me feel like, oh, I imagine people perceive the TV show in this very different way. Like, I don't know, if I'm trying to imagine it, like, I guess I could see how people would be annoyed, but it's because it's missing a lot of the deepness of it. Like, her whole concept about sparking joy, it's just like a phrase that she talks about on the TV show. But after reading the book, I feel like it's something that I never really thought about before, but is a feeling you can get attuned to.
It is a very evocative phrase, spark joy. It's 2 words, but you can really pull from that. I think that it is a very clever phrase. I like it.
Yeah. So go read your book, everyone.
Isaac asks, what day of the week do your calendars start on?
Well, Myke.
Well, I feel like there's only one option for this.
Okay.
But I put it
option?
in there because I figured you would surprise me. You saw it on like Wednesday or something. For me, it's Monday. Like Monday is the logical day to have a calendar start.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you there.
Oh,
I've changed all of my calendars to start on Monday. I never liked the U.S. arrangement of the week starts on Sunday.
I can't get my head around that as a concept. I don't understand why you would start calendars on a Sunday.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Like, Sunday is part of the weekend,
yeah.
right? We all call it the weekend. We don't call it the weekend/week start. Like, it's called the weekend. Why would you start your calendar on the last day of the weekend?
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense to me. I've heard a bunch of traditional reasons for it that I also think don't make any sense upon a moment's reflection.
Yeah, I'm not interested in hearing about the history, right, behind that. Like, it's not going to help the case of why you would continue to do it today, right? Like, because in the Revolutionary War, like, it's just not important, right? It's like for the today, for 2019, as to why your calendar app would still start. Your calendar app, right? Like, why would you set your calendar app to start on a Sunday? I just can't get it. If you're used to it, fine. But I can't imagine what the utility would be.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things. Growing up in America, all the calendars start on Sunday. Mm-hmm. But the reason why I've changed it in software, and actually I haven't even thought about this in years and years, because I just changed it in all of my calendars immediately, is because it just makes it easier scanning over the weeks. Like, it's having to know like when the weekend occurs. It's just easier to visually look at the calendar for me and be like, okay, the first 5 days, like those are all the work days, and these 2 days are the days where people are around. It's like, okay, I can see it much more clearly, and it always bifurcated my brain, trying to think like the center column is the work days and the edges are when people are around. Like, I just don't think about it that way. There's two groups, work days and weekends, and splitting the weekend so that you have half on one side of your calendar and half on the other always seemed dumb, and I never liked it. So Monday all the way.
While we're talking about calendars, so when we did our State of the Apps episode, I made a proclamation that there are no good apps, no new good apps anymore. Like that, it kind of felt like it had been a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Since I'd found something that was unique. Like, it felt like everything was just a remix when it came to apps. Like, there was just no new ideas.
Mm.
Friend of the show, _David Smith, who's a wonderful developer, who's, I think, probably these days best known for an app called Pedometer++. Mm-hmm. He has made an app called Calzones, which is also maybe the best name. It is part time zone calculator, part calendar. And I adore this application. One of the reasons I adore this application is I was really heavily involved in the development of the application. He originally asked me, tell me about how you use time zones. Mm-hmm. Because he knows I'm somebody who is constantly keeping track of 5 or 6 time zones because of all the people that I work with all over the world. And there are just a few touches in this application. If you ever need to know what time it is somewhere else in the world, you need this application. I can't believe I have never used an app that integrates time zone conversion and a calendar. Mm-hmm. Because you always need the calendar when you're doing a time zone conversion. Right? So when you're looking at the view to see what time it is in other places, your calendar appointments appear at the bottom. And then when you add calendar events, it has a whole UI to add calendar events. And you have a time picker, right? Where you can choose the time that you want the event to be on. David created a custom one that shows you all of your time zones. So maybe you're tracking 6 time zones. So when you're choosing the time in the event, you see all the time zones at the same time. It's brilliant, and I absolutely love it. And I wanted to talk about it so people could get it, because I think that a lot of our listeners could value it. And it's one of those apps that's immediately on the home screen. And yeah, I just think it's fantastic.
It's really great to be able to see the way you can scroll left and right and sort of go past the days and see your calendar move along the bottom. And then you have time zones that you can lock in on the top. Like it is real. I don't use time zones nearly as much as you do. I only really have to deal with one.
Oh, the widget's so good too. It's like the entire view of the application in the widget. Like all of the like conversion stuff is in the widget.
Ooh.
And so like you're tapping through and you can see all of the times, right? So you get like these columns of the like, so you, like you see it's like, oh, it's 10 a.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. in London, like 4 p.m. in Rome or whatever. And when you've actually found the time that you want to do the event on in the widget, you tap the number and it opens the app to create a new event at that exact time. It's like, yeah, that's what I want it to do. It's brilliant.
Oh, you know what? I never looked at the widget, and this might replace the long-standing clock KLOK.
This was it. So when me
Yeah.
and Dave were talking about this app very early on, I was like, Dave, these are my bare minimum requirements for a widget because I need to replace clock. Because at some point that thing's going away, and if I'm going to use a time zone conversion app, I only want to use one. So like the widget was the thing that I cared the most about initially, because it was like I want a new widget. And this one, again, it's like even better. It shows you calendar events, and then when you tap on the times, it just creates new events for you in the application. It's a great app with a hilarious name.
Yeah. And also, like you, I was in the beta _ invited me in, and I had one deal-breaking feature, and he's a fast developer. It's like later that day, boom. He's like, oh, I implemented that thing that you wanted. Amazing. Go check it out.
You talk about fast, right? So you look at this application. It came out on April 17th. Dave showed me he asked me for my feedback for like a proof of concept on February the 4th.
Mm-hmm.
And he did it in like 2 months. Cannot fathom that. I don't understand development, and I cannot understand how you could build an app in 2 months. He's very experienced, but still, it just seems, it's mind-boggling to me. Did you see there was a hashtag Myke was right theme in the, I think as his thanks to me. There's like themes. And one of them, he said, what are your two favorite colors? I was like, green and orange. And then there's a theme for me.
I don't think people should encourage the Myke was right.
There's one of them is 100% for you. The theme that's just called grays. It's your theme, right?
No,
it's got to be.
No.
It's just all gray.
Look, that's classy. Mm-hmm, that's subtle. Myke was right. Very brash, over the top, in your face.
Yeah, just like me.
Don't encourage him, people.
It's the color version representation of just my personality.
This episode of Cortex is brought to you by FreshBooks. Everyone likes to save time, but it's especially important when you're a freelancer. And FreshBooks is the online, simple cloud accounting software that's going to save you time. By simplifying the annoying, repetitive tasks like invoicing, tracking expenses, and, most importantly, getting paid, FreshBooks has dramatically reduced the time it takes for over 10 million people to deal with their paperwork. And it's not just the paperwork that they help automate, it's also that awkward socialness. I've had this experience. Sometimes you send someone an invoice, and then it's all quiet on the Western Front. And it can be really awkward to know how to deal with that. But FreshBooks really helps. They automate late payment email reminders so that you can spend less time chasing up clients or just less time worrying about it as one of those things that's on your mind and causes you anxiety, but that you don't actually do anything with. And they also eliminate the uncertainty about if the client's actually seen it. FreshBooks can let you know if they've received that invoice, so you can know without having to ask someone if you've sent it to the correct address or not. This helps put an end to the guessing games. So if you're listening to this show, and if you're a freelancer of any kind and you've not tried FreshBooks, you really need to use it. I've used FreshBooks to invoice clients. I can't conceive of doing anything else. Now, FreshBooks are offering an unrestricted 30-day free trial for listeners of the show. No credit card required. All you have to do is go to freshbooks.com/Cortex and enter Cortex in the How Did You Hear About Us section. That's freshbooks.com/Cortex and enter Cortex in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Thanks to FreshBooks for their support of this show and all of Relay FM.
Camille wants to know, what does your current watch face look like?
You know what? I just realized I was going to ask what your watch face looks like. And then I was sad for a moment. And I thought, oh, Myke doesn't have a watch face anymore.
I do. It's really beautiful.
Are you going to put it in the show notes?
No.
Okay.
I have a different watch now.
Oh, you have a new one now?
You've seen it.
Well, look, when you say a new one, I don't know how new, like, you watch people, you're buying watches all the time. So I don't know.
I'm not buying watches all the time. I have 2 watches.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll skip right past that. Here is my current watch face. I'm sending it to you. Okay. God, I don't even remember what the heck they're called anymore. After that time where I ragefully screenshot all of the watch faces and arranged them and tried to show the limit, like now I don't even remember the names of any of these things, but I'm using the watch face that has the 4 circular complications that you can use on it, which, as far as I'm concerned, is the literally only usable watch face in this current generation.
I think it's infograph, right?
Infograph analog. Yeah, I think that's what it is. WWDC is coming up. I know I shouldn't say this. I know I shouldn't say it. But I swear to God, if there isn't the ability for developers to make watch faces, or at the bare minimum, a doubling in the amount of actual usable watch faces, I'm going to lose my mind. I really am.
I like that you're like, I'm not going to say it. There's no threat. Nothing's going to happen. Like, if they don't do it, then you're still stuck.
Yeah, no, I am. I'm totally stuck. It has really been amazing that this year's watch OS with the watch faces, I think, was a tremendously weird step backwards in terms of if you actually try to want to use something usable. But this is what I have. Just to go through it really quickly, I have the very vital OmniFocus at the top, which I really like, which shows what is the thing that I should theoretically be doing now. I don't always perfectly follow it, but I do like to have it there on the watch.
So that's the text.
Yeah, the text at the top is pulled from OmniFocus.
So what that's doing is looking at like current start date, current end date. What is the thing that falls within that bracket?
Yeah, if you are a pro user of OmniFocus, you can set up a custom perspective and say, I want this custom perspective to show up on the watch.
Oh, I know what you mean by pro user. I thought you just meant like really talented. Like, but you mean if you pay for it.
Yeah, no, I mean if you pay for it.
If you're elite OmniFocus like user like I am.
Yeah. If you're a noob, you're never going to figure this out.
They don't let you. You got to be in the pro league to get access to this feature.
To me, that's a total deal-breaking feature for a watch. Like, I have to be able to have OmniFocus on there in the way that it can display some words, which then immediately eliminates like almost all of the watch faces. I know I'm always putting in requests to Omni on the podcast, but I'm going to do it again.
Let's go to the forum. What's wrong with you?
No, listen. I'm just going to. This is clearly the most sensible way to do it. It does drive me crazy though that it doesn't respect the order in the customs perspective. If you have an item that is due, it always puts that at like the top on your watch, which is a little frustrating because sometimes it's like, yes, I know a thing is due in a week. I don't need to see it now. There's other stuff I would rather have at the top. So I wish it would respect the sort order on the phone and the perspective. But anyway, OmniFocus bug filed. Then we have Carrot, which is of course the best weather app that exists. The one on the bottom is timers, so I can quickly tap and start a timer. That one also sometimes rotates. I sometimes change that one out. And the one on the left, I really want to recommend. I absolutely love this. It's the simplest thing. It's called Better Day. This is what so much of the Apple Watch should be, but it's just a little app that allows you to customize how do you want the day and date shown on your watch. And it sounds like such a simple thing, but there are very many things that you might want to have. And I absolutely love this because it shows, it says April 18th in words, but what I really like is the visual indicator of how much of the month has passed. I find that to just be really useful to see at a glance. Like, I know obviously the number should tell me, but I just like to receive that information in just a more visual way. So I love that there's a little progress slider for how much of the month has gone by. So that's my current watch face.
Okay. I don't miss the Apple Watch.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you for not missing the Apple Watch. I mean, I have many complaints about the notification system that we can save for a later WWDC issue. When you said that you gave it up, I wasn't like appalled. I can totally understand why someone would want to do that. And I do think that the people I see who have the Apple Watch with frequent notifications, I think are crazy people driving themselves crazy. Like don't do that. Like if you get an Apple Watch, the very first thing you should do is turn off all of the notifications and then figure out what you actually want to turn on.
Olivier asks, I'm somehow really interested in the Cortex discussion recently about Deliveroo, which is when you were all locked away for a while and I was monitoring how many meals you were getting. I would love it if you guys spoke a little bit. Do you remember when you were in your fortress of solitude?
No. I remember. I'm just confused that someone has a Deliveroo related question.
Well, it was more like, okay, so let me finish the question. I think it makes a bit more sense. Would love if you guys spoke about food a little bit in general. Like lunch is a productivity killer for me, says Olivier. So you were talking about like, you were getting just food deliveries because then you didn't have to think about anything, right?
Yeah.
During that period of time. I hate lunchtime.
Yeah, lunch is the worst.
It's the worst thing.
It's clearly the worst meal. It's at the worst time.
Especially...
lunch.
Exactly. You know what? Yeah, you lunch, all right? Lunch at home. If you've got a reason to be out of the house, lunch is great. Brunch is better, but lunch is good, right?
Yeah.
But at home, lunch is just a bastard. I hate it. Because... especially if you're trying to not eat carbs, lunch can just go away. I hate you. Most of the time I don't eat lunch, or I like try and combine breakfast and lunch into one meal.
Yeah.
I have kind of found that like if I am going to be at home all day, I don't actually need a lot of food to keep me going for the day, and like without there being a detrimental hit on my energy level. So I kind of just manage that way. So I don't know if I can recommend this to people specifically, but like the way that I think we both deal with it is we just try and have lunch as little as possible because it just gets in the way.
My solution is a little different, which is just that I've mentioned this in videos, but I really like, I can never express how much of a life-changing thing it was for me to realize that I don't need to eat breakfast. And like, it is a miserable change going through that at first. But being on the other side of it, like, it really was life-changing.
Yeah, I think I'm in a similar boat to you. I have coffee in the morning, and then I'll eat something maybe around 11 or 12. So, like, I don't really feel like I have either lunch or breakfast anymore. I just have this, like, and it's not brunch because I'm eating like not brunch food, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not eating like a stack of pancakes, but like just what I will have is like, bro, that's the one meal that I have other than dinner that day.
Yeah. So like not having breakfast also sort of gets right around to the lunch problem because like food in general is this weird productivity killer. I hate it in the morning because it's a real danger zone of something went wrong, of like, oh, this don't have this ingredient, and then your mind starts going down like other tracks of like, well, what else could I have for breakfast? Like, forget it. Like all of that stuff is just totally gone. It's an interruption, and you can get sleepy after you eat. So by not having breakfast, on like perfect days when things are just going so great, it's like I don't eat any kind of lunch until noon, maybe even 1 or 2 o'clock if I'm like really on a roll and I just don't want to like break the streak. This way for me, what happens is lunch happens ideally after I have done all of the most important work that I'm going to do in the day, which is mainly like reading and research and writing stuff. And then because I hate lunch, I have an extremely limited array of options, which are always just available. Just usually like I have 2 different ways to cook eggs, and that is my lunch 80, 90% of the time. And we always just make sure to have a gigantic stack of eggs available in the house. So it's like work is done. I can just scramble up some eggs and I eat it. And now we're done here. The lunch isn't an interruption because I've front loaded the workday. I'm not having the terrible lunch food options. I'm actually just having breakfast. And then you just go on to dinner, which is like the one real meal in the day. So yeah, lunch is the worst. It's terrible. Do everything you can to minimize its impact. And for me personally, skipping breakfast and then moving breakfast to basically be lunch, huge quality of life improvement.
Helps you lose weight too.
Yeah. Depending on what you do for dinner, though, you can really
tip that scale if you want to. Yeah, it's not a be all end all. You've got to be watching everything.
Yeah, it's not you can still be net positive on calories very easily depending on what you're doing for dinner.
Oh, big bowl of pasta.
Yeah, it's fine. I skipped breakfast. No, it's not.
I ate a whole pizza and pasta. I only had breakfast. I didn't have breakfast today, so I'm fine. I'm still on that diet.
Yeah, is it working out?
Yep. I'm 20 pounds now.
Oh, wow. Holy cow.
Yeah, man.
I don't know if I'm even going to recognize you the next time I see you in person.
I don't know. So I'm working through. I'm very happy.
It's going to be Slim Myke on stage.
Hopefully. I think I'm about halfway to where I want to be. But I'm currently the lightest I've been in like 6 or 7 years. So.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's really good. Congratulations.
Thank you. Samuel says, I recently got an iPhone XS Max and I'm considering getting a PopSocket, but I'm concerned about how well it will fit in my pockets and also affect the wireless charging. What is your current deal with PopSockets on your phones?
It kills me. The wireless really kills me.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm constantly trading off the wireless and the PopSocket. What I'm currently doing is I found a case for my iPhone that I really like. It's the Moment iPhone case.
Oh, the camera people.
The case is there because it's attachable for lenses to your iPhone, which I got because I wanted to try it out. Like I thought it was just an interesting system. But it turns out I actually really just like the case. I think it's maybe one of the best iPhone cases I've come across. And currently I just have the PopSocket attached to that case. But I do find myself constantly going back and forth between liking the PopSocket for being able to hold the phone and then being annoyed that I can't use wireless charging, which is doubly annoyed now that I have the AirPods that have wireless charging as well. It's like I just don't want to have to deal with plugging in the wires. I find it a constant frustration between these two feature sets. And I always want both with none of the trade-offs, and I can't get that. So I flip back and forth between them.
They have an option, but it's not good. Like they have this new PopSocket where you can take a piece of it off and it will work.
No, but that defeats the whole purpose. I might as well just plug in a wire.
Exactly.
Forget it.
My thing is I'm just not a wireless charging person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. So it doesn't bother me because I care more about the PopSocket than wireless charging, and I'm just not.
Yeah.
I have a couple of docks that I use already that just have iPhone cables in. I've been using them for years. One on my desk, one on my bedside, and that works great for me. I use the PopSocket all the time. I have no problem with like putting it in pockets and stuff because you kind of just get used to the way that you put your phone in your pocket, and the way that I put my phone in my pocket is like I basically put my hand over the PopSocket and put it in. That did not take me very long to adjust to at all. Yeah,
that's the move. That's the move when you have the PopSocket on there.
Yep. I actually have a couple more PopSocket questions. One comes from Yakko. Do you put your PopSocket in the middle of your phone or do you have it to the side? Where do you place it?
I place it kind of near the top.
Interesting.
Because I like it to be able to, if I have the phone in portrait mode and I put it down on the table so that it's lifted up a little bit like it's facing me on the table. Every time I have to put a PopSocket on, I very carefully am trying to find the balance spot where I can put it far enough up the phone so that the phone will face me in portrait when it's on the table, but not so far up that I can't, in landscape mode, also have the PopSocket support the phone.
Yeah.
So there's maybe a 3 millimeter worth of tolerance for finding that sweet spot, and so I'm always very carefully like I want it to be in both of these positions. So that's where I go for it. But what do you do, Myke?
Mine's in the middle. Like on an iPhone, it goes directly under the Apple logo on my case.
Right.
Because that way, I think it's aesthetically pleasing because it doesn't cover up the Apple logo. That would drive me mad. But also, it's in a place where I can hold it and still with my thumb reach the whole screen.
Yeah.
Because like with your system, I don't know if you could use it one-handed.
Yeah, no, you can't. I can totally use it one-handed.
Okay.
It's funny. It's a little bit like the opposite of having the phone rest on your pinky and you use your pinky to move the phone up and down. Having the PopSocket high, you can raise the PopSocket with your middle and index finger holding it. So it's very one-handable.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Like you're pulling the phone up instead of dropping it down.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting. That's interesting. And PSI Monkey asks, have you ever tried a PopSocket on an iPad?
No, Monkey. I have not because that's dumb.
No, I haven't done it either. Kindle, though, that's a life hack.
Kindle, great. 12.9-inch iPad,
No, you'd need like a bunch of them.
Yeah.
I just don't think one would be enough. I feel like that'd be more of a problem.
Yeah.
Andrew asks, when you transitioned from employee to business owner, did you hire an accountant? And if so, at what point? Andrew, this shouldn't be a question. This is a definite. You gotta have them. You gotta have one, in my opinion, like immediately. As soon as I wanted to set up my company, I hired a professional.
Yeah.
Because I don't know anything about taxes, and it's really freaking confusing, and it only gets more confusing as time goes on. So hire an accountant as soon as you feasibly can would be my recommendation.
Yeah. I didn't hire an accountant at first, and that was just partly because my father is a tax attorney, and so he was handling a bunch of the finance stuff at the start. But very, very quickly, like you said, you get into complicated situations, and it's like, no, we need to hire someone.
Right, but even then, you weren't doing it on your own, right?
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like, I didn't hire someone because I had someone in the family, right,
Yeah.
who was an expert in this area. But even then, it's like, well, my father doesn't know all the tax laws, like, for 2 countries. So I eventually transitioned to an actual accountant, and then what is now a team of accountants and
squad of accountants. What is a group of accountants called?
I don't know.
A murder. A murder of
No. I feel like it needs to be some coin related thing. Like it's a change of accountants.
A change of accountants. I like that. A bill of accountants.
Yeah, something like that. But I am in a very particular situation, but without a doubt, like it sounds like an exaggeration, but the accountancy and tax stuff is by far and away the biggest source of stress in running your own business. And it's like I can't even conceive of trying to do it on my own.
Yep.
Being in a dual citizen brings up a whole bunch of particular problems that most people don't have to deal with. But it's like if you're trying to run your own business, you should not be dealing with the total spaghetti nightmare of accounting and taxes. Like you just don't even try. Immediately hire an accountant.
Yeah, and if you can, or if you think it might be helpful, speak to a attorney, a lawyer or something too, just to make sure you've got all of that sort of stuff squared away. Depending on where you're starting with your business, sometimes there's like additional legal paperwork that you might need.
Yeah.
It's difficult. I have this theory, which I think I've shared on the show before. Accountants and lawyers exist so accountants and lawyers can exist.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
This isn't something that accountants and lawyers are doing, but the systems that surround them, I genuinely believe, are created to be so complicated that it supports the industries. This stuff doesn't have to be the way that it is, but it is that way. So, yeah.
Yeah. This is one of those things in life where I've sort of changed because I remember when I was younger listening to people complaining about the complication of the tax code and feeling like it was a sort of fake complaint that people were using because they just didn't like taxes. Mm-hmm. And now having had direct experience with it, like there are times when you can just see the intentional complexity in rules. And it's like, the system is not designed for its stated purpose, which is how do we fund a country in a reasonable way? It's like, no. This system is just a quagmire of competing interests. And it's really unbelievable when you see it up close. Like it's a very simple system if you're just an employee, but the moment you're not an employee, it's a freaking nightmare. And I completely understand why now people who own businesses, you'll often hear complaining about the complexity of all of these systems because it is legitimately a problem at a whole bunch of levels. And it just doesn't feel like it needs to be that way. Mm-hmm. But it's an expression of all of these competing interests.
But then it all comes down to the hilarious part where you're still signing it and saying you understand it and that everything's correct, even though you definitely do not.
Yeah, I know. I always really resent that part.
It annoys me every single time. Like, why do I pay anyone if it doesn't matter ultimately?
Yeah. But yeah, so pro tip, hire an accountant.
Yeah, really do. Like, genuinely, really, really do. We don't spend a ton of time talking about like how you should set up your business because I just don't know how much advice we really have to give because both of us have only really done it once or twice. But
yeah, and it's always so particular.
Yeah,
like the reasons for setting up a company in a particular way just matter so much on the individual circumstances that talking about it feels pointless. It's not generally applicable knowledge. So like I wouldn't.
Yeah, especially as we're in the UK and the majority of our audience is in the US and the systems are completely different. Like even just the nomenclature of what a company is, right? Like what it's called is like a completely different thing.
Yeah, I had a lot of vocabulary to get my head around in the UK where I was like, what are these words? Why do you say things like, oh, we're trading now? Like, does that mean I have a company? Like, I don't understand.
We're just all trading goods. But yeah, get an accountant. Speak to an accountant, get an accountant. This episode is brought to you by Eero. With Eero, you can build a Wi-Fi system perfectly tailored to your home. We live in such a high bandwidth world now. You need a distributed system in your home to make sure that you can get the best speeds available. Because if you want to stream Netflix in the kitchen, somebody wants to listen to Spotify in the bedroom, you got to make sure that you have an enterprise-grade Wi-Fi system, which Eero can give you in your own home in just a few minutes, and that will ensure that everything runs smooth, fast, all times. It starts with the second generation Eero device, which has 3 5 GHz radios. This allows for increased speed and range. It will sit flat on any surface and you can connect it wirelessly or over Ethernet if you want to. Then you'll be able to easily expand the coverage from this device out to your whole home by adding in Eero beacons. These are tiny little devices. They plug directly into the wall so you can put them in every corner. If you have an outlet, you can put a beacon in it and then you'll be able to extend that connection out to everywhere. And Eero is also now introducing Eero Plus, which is designed to provide simple, reliable security to help defend all of the devices in your home from malware, phishing, and unsuitable content. Eero Plus can automatically tag sites that contain violent, illegal, or adult content, so you have powerful parental controls at your fingertips. It also includes ad blocking functionality to help load times for websites that are full of privacy-invading ad tracking. It's also possible to have Eero Plus check the sites that you visit against a database of millions of unknown threats as well to prevent you from visiting anything malicious. Eero Plus even includes subscriptions to 1Password for password management and Malwarebytes for antivirus solutions as well. Eero is amazing. The connection that you can get from an Eero device in your home really is unbelievable. Having that system, that distributed system that's really tailored to do this is fantastic. You'll be able to get speeds everywhere. I've used Eero devices extensively and I'm really, really happy with the results that I've seen, as is everybody I know that has one. Never think about Wi-Fi again. Get $100 off the Eero base unit and 2 beacons package and 1 year of Eero Plus just by going to eero.com/Cortex and at checkout use the promo code Cortex. That's eero.com/Cortex and the code Cortex to get $100 off the Eero base unit and 2 beacons package and 1 year of Eero Plus. Our thanks to Eero for their support of this show and Relay FM. Brandon asks, why don't either of you post content as text? Gray, given that your videos are scripted anyways, why do you prefer communicating via video? As someone starting out wanting to have a creative outlet, what medium should I focus on, text, video, or audio?
Have you ever really written articles, Myke?
Oh, I've tried, man. I tried.
Oh, have you? Did you try to have a blog?
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yeah, did I? Oof, so many. So many.
Really?
Oh,
wow.
My God, so many failed blogs in my lifetime. I tried being like Apple News reporter. I tried reviewing apps. I tried a million different personal blogs, of my own personal musings about things. It's just it's a disaster back there in the annals of web history. Luckily, nothing ever got big enough that it would be stored anywhere, and I took a lot of time to delete the rest. It's just like I'm not good enough at it. No, you know what? I want to rephrase that. If I ever come across something that I've written, by and large, I'm really happy with it. Because I don't think that I'm a bad communicator. Like, I can communicate things. I just really do not enjoy writing. It's just not a thing that I enjoy. I don't like grammar, because I'm not good at it. Mm-hmm. I don't like having to remember all the different rules and the style guides, right, that people seem to really love. I'm not interested in any of that. And I don't like the process of immediate editing. I get too stuck in that. So like writing something, seeing what it said, and then be like, oh, fix that, because it stops the flow. The editing that I do now happens afterwards. I've said all the stuff already. I can't like actually change what I just said, so I'll just change it later if I need to. And I really like that method of communicating. Like I just like talking extemporaneously because it matches more with the way that my brain works, I think. And that's why I've always preferred audio. I don't think that there is a specific medium worth focusing on, like out of text, video, or audio. It's about what you prefer. Try them all if you really are not sure and see which one fits for you, but they're very different.
Yeah, they're very different mediums. I'm sure, I don't know if I've mentioned it before, but one of my goals for doing podcasting was actually to get better at extemporaneous speaking. Because like that's never felt like a core skill of mine.
I want to conversation.
Yeah. And I do think I've gotten better over the years of doing podcasts, but that was specifically something in mind that I had of like, this is a way to try to exercise a skill, talking to people. And like any of these skills, it's something that you can develop over time. But yeah, like what medium should you focus on, text, video, or audio? I feel like that's a strange question because it feels like you should be thinking in terms of what is it that you want to make. And I mean, like I would say of those three, text is the total loser medium. But if you really love the written word, then you should still focus on text, and maybe you will be successful at it.
The total loser medium.
Yeah, you can quote me on that.
I'm not going to ask you to clarify what the loser is in that sentence. I don't want you to do it either.
Okay, well, let me then just say why I don't really write articles.
Yeah.
I mean, if you like go through my blog, you'll find there's a few, but they all have something in common, which is like I was kind of like annoyed about something and wrote it out, or they tended to be produced in relatively short periods of time. But like you, I don't really like writing either. And so for me to write an article for my blog it's like an insanely poor use of my time, because it's all of the frustration that comes with writing something with just no upside whatsoever. Because the number of views, the number of people who are going to read it on my website is dramatically smaller than if I'm uploading a video to YouTube. And I don't earn any money from it. I didn't want to have ads on my blog. So like spending time to write an article is crazy. It's like self-mutilation. Like I'll go through all the agony of writing and get nothing in return. Plus there is a thing which is, thinking about the thing that you want to create. I have definitely noticed over time and developed my writing skill in a particular way where, I started out thinking like, oh, I want to try my hand at writing and writing a whole bunch of stuff. And then I realized very quickly like, oh, I'm better at nonfiction than I am at fiction. And then within that genre is like, oh, I'm actually better at writing things that are explanatory. And then realizing, oh, I'm good at writing things that are meant to be spoken, and then writing things that I am intending to speak. And so over time, I've ended up just developing a writing style that really doesn't make sense in the actual written form.
Yes, 100%. I write like I speak now. Yeah. And I get this a lot, like from friends and stuff, that in text messages and stuff, they can really hear my voice. Because it's very similar. I don't know what the chicken or the egg is in that scenario, but like that's kind of where I am.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've gone so far down this road of like developing a writing style that is intended for me to speak that I've had to change something recently about reaching out to experts, where I used to send experts a copy of the script to say like, oh, hey, can you take a look at this? This is something that I'm working on. And over the years, I've noticed that more and more of the feedback, people were getting distracted by all of the stuff that wasn't the reason why I'm contacting an expert about, where they're like, what the hell is this paragraph? Like, this paragraph doesn't make any sense. And it's like, oh, right, of course, because I'm going to be speaking it. It's not written to be understood on the page. So I've actually just started to send out modified versions of the script where I like strip out everything except the paragraphs or the little sentences that I care for the expert to look at.
For me only, it's not for you, right?
Yeah.
Like that's tailored to the way I speak, not the way that anybody else would read.
Yeah. And it's also why if you go through my blog and look at some of the older videos, I used to post the script as a transcript along with the videos. Mm-hmm. And I eventually stopped doing that for the same reason. It's like, this actually doesn't add anything. It's not intended to be written this way. So I think my ability even to write an article that is intended to be read and understood in the pure written form, like I think that has atrophied as I've strengthened my skill of writing a thing that I intend to speak. So writing for me in text, anyway, total loser move.
Dean asks, with time tracking, how granular is too granular? I started tracking my time this year, and I'm still trying to find the right level of depth without having to switch timers every 5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes, way too granular. Way too granular.
6 minutes, that's fine. 5 if you really pushed it.
Oh man, that's crazy. What do you think is like the minimum unit of time to track? Like, what do you think is the smallest unit that you tend to track, Myke?
20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah, okay. That is exactly I feel like less than 20 minutes, it becomes a bit of an exercise in futility.
I think what might be a better thing to say is, whenever I'm tracking time, I'm expecting at least that amount of time. Sometimes it's 10, but that's because I finished what I wanted to do faster than I thought it was going to take me to do it.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. Yeah.
Like because I only track intentional work time. Mm-hmm. So like if I sit down to do a thing, start the timer, and I could be there for 2 hours or I could be there for 11 minutes, right? But when I'm sitting down to do it, I'm expecting this will probably take me about half an hour.
Yeah.
Which is why also time tracking is so important, because otherwise I would think everything took me exactly 30 minutes to complete when it really does not. I had a funny day yesterday. I had like just a crazy day, busy wise, and I want to just send you a screenshot because it just looks so funny in the Toggle Mac app, the piece of junk that is. I just want to show you what my projects just look like on a daily basis. I just think it's funny. So this is on like a day of editing 3 shows and recording 2 shows. And it just starts from the morning. Show prep, editing, recording, editing, sponsors, recording, editing. And it's just this like, I look at this list and I'm just like, oh boy, that was a difficult day.
The thing that I like about, you say you're aiming for 20 minutes. The thing I like about time tracking is sort of the reverse about that, which is the like, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to edit this podcast. Let me start the podcast editing timer. And then somehow 30 minutes later, it's like, wait a minute, why am I watching YouTube videos? Like, how did I, right? Like, oh, I thought I was going to sit down and do this thing, and then I just didn't. And that ability to take the timer and go like, no, this wasn't podcast time at all. And see the horror, like what is the unit of time that you actually spent not doing the thing that you intended to is great.
So here's an interesting philosophical question for you then. Mm-hmm. Do you keep that time?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, good.
I specifically keep that time.
So like with my editing, right, I might be like, of that, say an hour, 2 hours or whatever, there might be like half an hour where I was just like walking around the house, like checking Instagram. But like that is, in my mind, that's the work time, right? Because it's like, I think about it like this idea of solo work and typical team-based work, like you work for yourself or you work as part of a company and a team. You don't sit and just work constantly for a period of time. You do get distracted. You do go to the coffee machine. You do go talk to somebody, right? But you're still working. You are at work and being paid for that time. So I think that it is unfair to be like, right, I'm going to stand up now and go into the kitchen. Stop the timer. Like, it just seems wild to me.
This is also in my, like when I'm in a good working groove, is I'm intentionally taking breaks that are around 20 minutes long anyway. This is why I think like 20 minutes is the sort of minimum viable time tracking thing.
20-minute break after how much work?
I would say like an hour and 20 minutes of work, hour and 40 minutes of work.
Right.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
They're taking typically like 20 minutes of break for every 2 hours of work.
Yeah.
In a 2-hour window of time, 20 minutes of that was a break.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, because it's like I'm so aware that there is this like mental clock in my head that I feel like no matter what I'm working on, I start to feel getting antsy after the hour and 20-minute mark. And it's like if I'm really into something, I can push it for a while, but then I need to take a break and then come back. So I do track that break time as a separate break. Mm-hmm. I don't track that as part of the working time, but it's useful to me because I want to see the pattern of what does my workday look like.
Okay, yeah. See, I just leave it all in one, but I'm way less granular than you, right?
Yeah, I think that's like, again, if you consider that part of the work, I think that's totally fine. To talk about like the question behind this question is that the time tracking should serve you. You are not a slave to the time tracking, and if you're constantly flipping switches to track your time, doesn't sound like it's actually helpful to you.
No.
But it's the same way, like this thing that I find is, one of the great frustrations of my work is I always think of this as, particularly when it comes to the writing, of bouncing off the work. I was like, I sat down to do the thing and I sort of bounced right off it. And I do like to keep a record of that, just to have that in the system. And it's very useful because like, I started a timer saying I was going to do this thing, and then somehow I just didn't. And now I'm going to flip all of this time from, I was writing, into this was unintentional time. And this is like the worst kind of time that I can possibly have. But I would say as a general rule, bigger, broader things are much better to track than small, granular pieces. Like when in doubt, combine categories into bigger, broader categories. You almost certainly start out by thinking you need to track things much more granularly than you do. And you really probably only just need to see the bigger, broader trends.